It is the 4th of November, 2020. Chapter 2, Part 4. The gigantic primal fire elemental vanished slowly as though melting away into nothing. The blazing heat that it left in its wake began to cool off. As the fire elemental disappeared, Mononaga could feel the link he had to it fading away, like smoke on the wind. The primal fire elemental possessed extraordinary attack power and stamina, but Aura, who could ignore the damage of its area effect flames, could nimbly evade its blow, was little more than a gigantic target. Although Aura would still lose HP if she was attacked, Mara the Druid would not permit that to occur. In fact, he had cast all sorts of buffs and debuffs to great effect during the battle. The two of them played their roles as frontliner and rearguard perfectly, with flawless teamwork. At the same time, Mononaga could feel the reality of this battle, completely unlike those he had fought in the game. Spectacular. The two of you put on a good show. The twins smiled happily as they heard Mononaga's sincere praise. Thank you, Mononaga-sama. It's been some time since we had to work so hard. The two of them tried to wipe off their sweat. Right after they did, more of it bedded on their skin, rolling down their dark skin. Mononaga silently opened his inventory and withdrew a magic item, a pitcher of endless water. In Yggdrasil, there were statues like hunger and thirst, but neither of those applied to the undead Mononaga, so he had no use for items like those. At most, he used them on his mounts. The glass pitcher was filled with water. Droplets of condensation immediately formed on the surface of the glass, probably because the water inside was very cold. Mononaga then took out a pair of beautiful glasses, filled them with water from the pitcher, and gave them to the twins. Aura, Mara, have a drink. Eh? But that's no good right now, Mononaga-sama. Yes. I can make water with my magic too. Mononaga smiled bitterly as he saw Aura waving her head and Mara shaking his head. Think nothing of it. The two of you have always done well. Think of this as my thanks to you. What? We? Aura and Mara's ear turned red, and they nervously reached out to take their glasses. Thank you, Mononaga-sama. To think you would pour water for us, Mononaga-sama. Was this so delightful? Aura, who had ceased her protest, took the glass into both hands and downed it in one gulp. Droplets of water escaped the corner of her mouth, down the smooth curves of her pulsing throat, and into the jerkin covering her chest. Mara held his cup with both hands and slowly sipped from it. The difference between them were obvious, even in the way they drank water. Mononaga touched his throat as he saw the two of them. It felt like there was a thin layer of skin around his neck. To date, this body of his had not felt thirst, so did not bother. Although he was very well aware that the dead would not feel this way, he could not help but think this was all a joke once he realized he was no longer human. Mononaga continued touching himself. He had no skin, muscles, blood vessels, nerves, or internal organs. His body was nothing but bones. He vaguely understood it in his heart, but it felt so unreal that he could not help exploring his body with his fingers. His sense of touch seemed duller from when he was a human being, as though there was a thin layer of cloth between his fingers and whatever he was touching. In contrast, his vision, hearing, and other senses were sharper than before. One might expect a body composed solely of bones to be easily broken, but each bone felt stronger than steel when he touched it. At the same time, he felt a strange sense of completion and satisfaction. This was his real body, despite it being completely different from his old one. Perhaps it was because of this feeling that he was not afraid, despite his transfiguration, to a set of white bones. Do you want more? Mononaga raised the pitcher as he asked the twins, who had finished their water. Thanks, I've drunk enough. Is that so? Then Mara, do you want some more? I also had enough. I don't feel thirsty anymore. Mononaga nodded as he took back the glasses, before returning them all into his pockets. Ori suddenly whispered, I thought Mononaga-sama would be scared in that. Oh, really? If you feel that way. Now it's good. It's the best. Then we will leave it at that. Mononaga was taken somewhat aback by Aura's passionate answer. Mononaga-sama? Are we the only ones that you were nice to? Mononaga was unsure how to answer Aura's muttered question. Instead, he patted her lightly on the head. Hey? Aura looked like a puppy that had just seen something she liked. Mara had a jealous look on his face. Just then a voice rang out. Oh yeah, am I the first to arrive? The tone was archaic and formal, but the voice itself sounded like it belonged to a young person. A shadow formed over the ground, and then the shadow turned into what looks like a door from which a person emerged. She wore a black ball gown which looked like soft to the touch. Her skirt was puffed into a voluminous spell-shape. On top of that was a bolero edged with frills, lace and ribbons, as well as a pair of long silk gloves. Together they covered most of her skin. Her skin was pale as wax, and her boots looked like you could only describe as stunningly beautiful. Her long silver hair was tied up into a ponytail that descended from one side of her head, exposing her face. Her deep red pupils were filled with a seductive look of delight. She looked to be 14 years old or younger, and her innocent, youthful appearance combined with the qualities of cuteness and beauty into a single whole. However, her breast bulged proudly forward in a decidedly unchildlike manner. "Weren't you told not to be frivolous, use gait in Nazareth? We are warded against teleportation after all. You should be able to walk here. Shouldn't you have come on foot?" shouted. The annoyed voice came from beside one another. There were no trace of its previous puppy-like obedience in those cold words, only a burning hostility. Mara was trembling by the side, and he slowly edged himself away from his sister. In truth, the speed at which the leopard called Aura had changed its butt startled Mononaga as well. The girl who had come here, who had the highest tier of teleportation magic, was called Shaltea. She did not even bother looking at Aura, who was scowling at her. Instead, she swiftly advanced before Mononaga. The bewitching scent of some kind of perfume hung around her. "Something stinks," Aura pats back. Then she followed it. "Don't tell me you started rotting because you're undead." Perhaps she saw Mononaga reflexively raising his head to sniff himself, but Shaltea furrowed her brows unhappily and replied, "Is that not quite distasteful? Mononaga-sama is undead as well." "Ha! What nonsense are you talking, Shaltea? Mononaga-sama is no more undead being. He's more like a super undead or a godly undead." Mononaga was somewhat baffled as he heard Shaltea and Mar going, and respectively. The fact was that in Yggdrasil he considered himself to be an ordinary undead creature, which was what Mononaga thought as he rounded his shoulder. In any case, there were no such things as super or godly undead. "But Nichan, maybe you shouldn't have said that." "Is that so? All right then. Don't tell me you started rotting because you are a walking corpse. That seems okay, sort of." After agreeing with Aura's take two, Shaltea placed her slender hands on the side of Mononaga's head as true to embrace it. "Ah, my master, my beloved master, the only one whom I cannot rule over." Her carmine lips parted, revealing a moist, slick tongue. The tongue moved like a living creature as Shaltea lovingly licked her lips. Her fragrant breath wafted out from her open mouth. Although she was perfectly suited for the role of alluring seductress in all other ways, she was far too young for it. The discrepancy between her expectation and reality was laughable. In addition, she was far too short. When she reached her hands out to hug Mononaga, it looked like she wanted to hang from his neck instead. However, there was too much affection for Mononaga. He was not used to girls. He wanted to take a step back. In the end, he decided to stand his ground. Is that how she really is? That thought echoed endlessly in his head. However, when Mononaga thought about the fact that she had been designed by his comrade, Peroncino, he mused that she might have been designed with such a personality. After all, Peroncino loved hay games and proudly declared that they were his life. Shaltea Bloodfallen was made by such a rotten individual. She was a true vampire, the guardian of the first to third floors of the great tomb of Nazareth. At the same time, she was a girl created by an aged arcane Africana, and her character design was filled with nods to various age games. That's enough out of you. Shaltea reached out to the lower gulf for the first time. In a mocking tone, she told her, "Are you still there, Shorty? I couldn't see you, so I thought you were gone." Mononaga did not wish to add to what Shaltea had just said. Aura's face was twitching uncontrollably, and then Shaltea ignored her and said to Mara, "It must be pretty tough for you, having to deal with a weirdo sister like that. You best leave her soon, lest you become a weirdo like her." Mara's face blanched instantly, because he knew Shaltea wanted to use him to start fighting. However, Aura simply smiled at him. "Shut up, fake tits. She dropped a bombshell. What the hell are you talking about? Her character's broken down. Mononaga muttered under his breath. Now that Shaltia's true nature had been revealed, she dropped the caution. It's so obvious. Damn, that is one weird chest. How many pads did you stuff in there? What? Shaltia was waving her hands in panic, as though she could dispense Aura's word with them. Though she had suitably childlike expression on her face, on the other hand, Aura grinned evil. You packed so much in there. I bet it shifts when you run, right? What? Shaltia made a strange noise as an extended finger poked her. I was right, wasn't I? Cool. Where'd they have they gone? So that's why you didn't run, even though you were worried. Instead, you used the gate. Shut up, shorty. It's like you have anything on you. Oh, I've got a lot more to show off. Or simply grinned in the face of Shaltia's desperate counterattack. Shocked Shaltia stumbled back and reflectively covered up her chest. It was a Saurus. I'm only 76 and I've got lots more time to grow, unlike an undead with no future like you. How sad. You will never grow again. Shaltia moaned in frustration and took another step back. There was a desperate, harried look on her face, which only made Aura smile in a frightened manner. You think you're actually happy with that bust of yours? Huh? Mononaga imagined he could hear Shaltia snapping. You shitty brat! It's too late to regret your words now. Rolling back, mist boiled off Shaltia's hand. Aura readied her whip in anticipation. Mononaga and Mara watched from the side, were at loss for words. The scene before Mononaga's eyes were vaguely familiar, and wondered if he could stop them. Peronichuna-san, who designed Shaltia, and Upukuchinama-san, who designed Aura and Mara, were younger brother and elder sister, and at times they would argue in a friendly manner, like what was happening now. Mononaga recalled the forms of his former comrades. He stood behind the quarreling pair. What a ruckus! The inhuman voice came just as Mononaga was reminiscing about the past. The strange, monotonous voice finally silenced the two of them. As he turned to look at the voice's origin, he saw a heteromorphic being shrouded in chill air. He stood 2.5 meters tall, and resembled a bipedal insect. It looked like some fiend that had melded a praying mantis and an ant together. It had a tail that was twice as long as its body, and was covered in sharp spikes which resembled icicles. Its powerful-looking mandibles looked like they could sever a man's arm in a single bite. It grasped a platinum halberd in 2 of its hands, and in the other 2 hands were a masterfully made mace rich in a black aura, and a gnarled-looking broadsword which did not look like it could be sheathed. It was surrounded by a frightening aura of cold. Its exoskeleton was a dull blue color and sparkled like a diamond dust. Protrusions which looked like icebergs bulged up from its back and shoulders. He was the guardian of the 5th floor, the ruler of glaciers, Koietus. The hilt of his halberd slammed into the arena floor. The ground around began to freeze. You stand before a supreme being. Contain yourself. The brat started it. Actually, Shaltia and Aura looked cases, while Mara panicked from the side. Mononaga could not hold it any longer, and curtly addressed the 2 of them. Shaltia, Aura, playtime is over. The 2 of them shuddered in shock, and lowered their heads simultaneously. My sirensis, apologies, they said in unison. Mononaga magnanimously accepted their apologies with a nod. Then he turned and said, Koietos, you come. I came immediately upon receiving your summons, Mononaga-sama. The water in the air froze with a crackling sound as it made contact with the white vapor puffing out of Koietos' mouth as he spoke. His cold was very bit as frigid as the primal fire element was hot. Anyone standing near him would suffer the effects of the lower temperature. They might even sustain frostbite. However, Mononaga did not feel anything. The fact was that everyone here was resistant to fire, cold, and acid attacks, or had some way to deal with it. You must have been very free with no intruders, no? Indeed. A clackling from his lower mandibles sounded like the threatening noises of a bat. However, Mononaga had the feeling that he was laughing. Even so, there are still things which must be done. So I was not free at all. Oh, things that had to be done. What were these things, may I ask? Training, in order, Be ready to deploy at any time. Although it was not too obvious from his appearance, Koyetos was designed to be a quite sensual warrior, but in personality or body, therefore, from the perspective of a weapon user, his attacks were the strongest in the great underground tomb of Nine. You've done all this for me. You have worked hard. My thanks. After hearing your praise, the task is not as hard. I see. Demerge and Albedo have arrived. Mononaga turned in the direction Koyatos was looking, at the entrance of the Colosseum, where he saw two figure centers. The one in front of was Albedo, and the man followed behind her like a lackey. Once she got close enough, Albedo smiled to Mononaga and bowed. The man bowed and said, "Forgive me for keeping everyone waiting." He was about 180 centimeters tall, and his skin was dark from the sun. His facial features looked like to be oriental. His jet-black hair was nearly combed back. The eyes under his pince-nez glasses could not even be said to be narrowed. It was doubtful whether they were actually open at all. He was dressed in a western suit with a matching tie. He gave the impression of being a professional businessman or a skilled lawyer. However, his gentleman appearance was hard-pressed to hide the evil air about him. A tail sheeted in silvery metal extended behind him, tipped by 6 sharp spikes. It was limited by flickering black flames. This man was the creator of Blazing Inferno, the Merge. He was the guardian of the 7th floor of the great underground tomb of Navi. This demon was designed by the defense commander of the NPCs. It seems everyone is here. Mononaga-sama, there are 2 more people who have not yet arrived, said the resonant voice. It seemed to pour into one side. The Merge words were empowered by a passive skill. This skill was called Command Mantra, and it could instantly turn the weak-minded into puppets, dancing on the merged strings. However, this skill had no effect on the people present. It was only used on people below level 40, so to everyone here it simply sounded good. No, those 2 guardians are only to be moved under special circumstances. Therefore, there is no need to call them over at the moment. I see. My allies have not arrived yet. Aura and Shaltia froze as they heard those words, and the smile froze on the better side. That fellow is just an arena guardian, one of the 4, which you're in charge of. Yes? Shaltia and Aura smiled as if the Labedo nodded vigorously in the Huyuhoko is it indeed. It would be good to inform the various arena guardians. Then let the area guardians like Gurren and Grant know about it as well. I'll leave the task to the various 4 guardians. There were 2 kinds of guardians in the Great Underground Tomb of Nalric. Floor guardians, like the ones before Mononaga at the moment, were responsible for 1 or more floors. Area guardians were responsible for an individual area within a floor. But the floor guardians were in charge of the area guardians, who were in turn in charge of a specific domain. Since there were many of them, they were individually not very important. In Alaric, the term guardian usually referred to a floor guardian. After the various floor guardians showed that they understood Mononaga's order, Alberto commanded, "Then, everyone, let us pledge our loyalty to the Supreme One." All the guardians nodded as one. Before Mononaga could interrupt, they had lined up before him. Alberto stood at their head, while the other guardians formed a line behind him. All the guardians had solemnly respectful, erect expressions. They showed no sign of playing around. Shaltea, who stood on one end of the line, stepped forward. Shaltea, Bloodfallen, guardian of the 1st, 2nd, and 3rd floors, presents herself to the master. She went to one knee, one hand pressed against her chest, and bowed deeply. After that, Koyeto stepped forward and said, "Koyetos, guardian of the 5th floor, presents himself to the master." Much like Shaltea had, he knelt before Mononaga like a vassal before a lord. Then it was the twin dark elves. "The guardian of the 6th floor, Arabella Fiora, presents herself to the master." Also, a guardian of the 6th floor, Marabella Fiore, presents himself to the master. They knelt respectfully and lowered their heads to Mononaga. Shaltea, Koyetos, Aura, and Mara had all different bodies, thus they should have each taken their steps forward differently. Yet, the way in which they knelt was identical, and they lined up neatly. After that, the Merge advanced in a dignified manner. The guardian of the 7th floor. The Merge presents himself to the master. Following his crisp words, the merge went to one knee in a graceful descent, as though expressing his heart through his actions. Finally, Albedo stepped forward. The Guardian Overseer Albedo presents herself to the master. She smiled to Mononaga, and knelt like the other guardians. However, Albedo continued speaking in a high and clear voice as she delivered her report to Mononaga. With the exception of the 4th floor guardian, Gargantua, and the 8th floor guardian, Victor, all the floor guardians are gathered before you. Thus, we offer up our utmost loyalty to the master. Mononaga could not speak as he looked at the 6 lowered heads before him. A strange pressure reeled the entire area. Perhaps only Mononaga could bear the painful, crushing air. He didn't know how to proceed. He had never seen anything like this before in his life. In his confusion, Mononaga accidentally activated a skill. A dreadful aura rolled out over the surroundings, and a halo of black radiance formed behind him. Mononaga had no time to cancel the skill. He frantically racked his brains to recall a scene from the movies or television, which would tell him how to respond appropriately. Raise your heads. With a shah, everyone raised their heads. Their coordination was so immaculate that Mononaga wondered if they had practiced that moment together. Then, first, I thank you all for coming here. There is no need for thanks. We are all Mononaga's loyal subordinates. To us, Mononaga-sama is our supreme overlord. None of the guardians opposed her statement, as expected of the guardian overseer. Mononaga looked on the guardians with a stern face, and he felt a choking sensation in his non-existent throat. It was the weight of being a leader bearing down on him. In addition, any orders he gave now would affect his relationship with them in the future. He could not help but hesitate as he contemplated the possibilities. Would he lead the great tomb of Nazarick to destruction because of his decision? The unease generated by that thought flooded his heart and mind. Mononaga-sama, it is only natural that you doubt us. After all, our abilities must be minuscule to your reckoning. Albedo removed the smile from her face and continued in a respectful tone that was laced with a stern shrink. However, Mononaga gives the order. We, all the guardians, will accomplish any task set to us, no matter how difficult or arduous, with every fiber of our beings. We hereby swear that we will never allow the 41 supreme beings of Irons Organ, our creators, to be disgraced by our actions. This we swear. The floor guardians chimed in right after Albedo. Their voices were filled with power, and adamant loyalty and determination would not be diminished by any number of foes. It was as though they were mocking Mononaga's previous worries that the NPCs might betray him. The darkness in his heart vanished like shadows in the morning sun. Mononaga was moved at the bottom of his heart that the NPCs designed by the members of the Undead Guards were possessed by such excellence. The golden radiance of the past still remained, the embodiment of everyone's hard work, their cunningly crafted creations, were still here. It filled him with joy. Mononaga smiled, although his skeletal face could not display any emotions. The points of crimson light in the eye sockets seemed to shine exceptionally bright. His prior unease was no longer existing. He simply spoke the words expected of a guildmaster. Excellent. Guardians, I know that you will understand my aims and successfully carry out my orders. There may be some things which are difficult to understand, but I hope you will pay attention and listen. I believe the great underground tomb of Nazarick has been coupled up in some kind of unknown situation. The guardian's face was still stern. There were no trace of surprise in it. Although I do not know what has caused this incident, the great tomb of Nazarick has been transported from its place in the swamps to a vast plain. Did anyone foresee the occurrence of this strange event? Albedo looked back at the guardians, and after seeing their reply written on their faces, she said, Regretfully, none of us have any idea what was going on. Then I have a question for the floor guardians. Have any of you discovered anything strange in your floors? After hearing this, each floor guardian responded, There are no abominations in the 7th floor. Same with the 6th. Any chances? The 5th floor is the same. Nothing is strange been sighted in the 1st or 3rd floor. Mononaga-sama, I shall investigate the 4th and 8th floor right away. Then I will leave the matters to Albedo. However, you must be careful on the 8th. If an emergency situation occurs there, this situation may emerge that you cannot deal with. Albedo bowed her head deeply to indicate she understood. Then shouted, "Then I shall handle matters on the surface." "There is no need. Sebas is currently reconnaissing the surfaces. Surprised flashed across the faces of Albedo and the other guardians. The great underground tomb of Nazareth, there were 4 NPCs who were exponents of melee combat. Coetus had the strongest attack power when using a weapon. Albedo had an impregnable defense when in her heavy armor, while Sebas in his true form was stronger than either of them in the melee combat. Then there was one more, one who was superior to all of them. There could be no other reason for the Guardian's surprise. Sebas, who could sweep away anyone before him in hand-to-hand combat, had been assigned the simple task of reconnaissance. He could tell how seriously Mononaga was taking this strange occurrence. Everyone was on their guard as usual. It was about time for him to return. Just then, Mononaga saw Sebas jogging over to them, until he reached the Guardians, genuflecting before Mononaga, and went to one knee as well. "Mononaga-sama, forgive my lateness. It is fine. Then, your report on the surrounding conditions." Sebas raised his head and looked around at the Guardians kneeling beside him. "The situation is critical, so obviously the floor Guardians need to know as well." "Yes. To begin with, the terrain surrounding us for a kilometer in each direction is a plain. There are no signs of man-made structures. I spotted some small animals, but there were no humanoid or large creatures." "Were those small animals monsters?" "No, they were life forms which had no combat power." "I see. Were the plains you spoke of covered in frozen grass which would cut you as you passed them?" "No, it was simple grass. There was nothing special about it." "And you did not see any sky castles or similar buildings?" "No, I did not. There were no sign of man-made illuminations in the sky or on the land." "I see. There was only a starry sky. Thank you for your hard work, Sebas." As he praised Sebas for his effort, Mononaga was somewhat disappointed, because he had not obtained any useful information. However, he was slowly realizing that he was no longer in the game world of Icarus, although he did not understand why he could use Icarus' equipment and use its spells. He didn't know why they had come here, but it would be wise to hide Nazareth's combat readiness, just in case. For all he knew, this might be someone else's territory, and might be censured for having come here without permission. No, he would be lucky if that was all to happen. "Guardians, increase the readiness of each floor by 1 level. We are unsure what has happened, so do not act uncautiously. If you encounter an intruder, do not slay them, but capture them alive at all costs. When you capture them, do as little harm to them as possible. I apologize for imposing such demands on all of you at a time like this." The Guardians voiced their acknowledgement and nodded in unison. "Next, I would like to understand the administrative operations of the tomb. Albedo, how is the exchange of security information between the Guardians of the various floors?" "In Yggdrasil, the Guardians were simple NPCs. They could only act according to their programs. There was no way the floors would exchange security information once. Each floor is administered by its respective floor Guardians, but the Merge is the overall defense commander, and everyone can share information with him." Mononaga was a bit surprised, but then he nodded in satisfaction. "Excellent. Nazareth's defense commander, the Merge, Guardian Overseer, Albedo. The 2 of you will be in charge of drawing up a more comprehensive administrative system for Nazareth." "Understood. The plans for the management system include the 8th, 9th, and 10th floor?" "The 8th floor is managed by Victor, so it will be fine. No entry to the 8th floor is forbidden. I rescind the order I just gave to Albedo as well. In short, entry to the 8th floor will only be effected with my permission. I will not undo the seal and permit direct access from the 7th floor to the 9th floor. After that, plan for the 9th floor and 10th floor as one whole." "Is that your will?" Albedo seemed quite surprised. Behind her, the Merge's eyes went wide, revealing his thoughts on the master. "Will the underlings be allowed to tramp through the domain of the supreme beings? Must he be given that much freedom?" The underlings in question were not the NPCs and monsters designed by the members of Ryan's Old Dawn, but the automatically spawned pop monsters from the dungeon. The fact was, the 9th and 10th floor lacked such monsters, barring very rare exceptions. Mononaga muttered to himself. Albedo seemed to regard that place as a holy sanctuary, but that was not the case. The reason why there were no pop monsters in the 9th floor was simply because if any intruders could overcome the NPC defenders on the 8th floor, the most powerful beings in Doom, then Einsoul Gaunt's chances of victory would be slim. Thus it would be better to play the role of a villain to the hilt and meet the invaders in the throne room for a final showdown. It would be fine, because in an emergency we need extra hands for security. Understood? I shall select only the finest and most potent troop for this duty. Mononaga nodded, and he looked forward towards the place. Aura and Mara, can you conceal the great underground tomb of Nazareth? Simple illusions don't seem very reliable. I'm thinking about the cost of illusions to give me a headache. Aura and Mara looked at each other and began thinking. After a while, Mara spoke. But using magic might be tricky. If we had to hide everything along with the surface. Although we cover the walls in mud and then add plants as camouflage. Do you intend to soil the glorious walls of Nazareth with base dirt? Alberta said, their back turned to Mara. Although her voice was sweet and velvet, the tone it carried was anything but. Mara's shoulders trembled, and although the surrounding guardians remained silent, their attitude suggested they shared Alberta's opinion. In contrast, Mononaga felt Alberta was being too much of a busybody. The situation was hardly serious enough to warrant such a reaction. Albergo, don't speak out of turn. I am addressing Mara. His voice was so deep that it surprised Mononaga himself. My dearest apologies, Mononaga-sama. Alberto's head was as low as it could go, and her face was frozen in fear. The guardians and Sebas stiffened up as well. Perhaps they thought that scolding was directed at them as well. A twinge of remorse struck Mononaga as he observed a quick change in the guardian's attitude, but he continued speaking to Mara. Can you conceal the walls by heaping dirt onto them? Yes, I can if you allow it, Mononaga-sama. However, yes, an observer from a distance would think the ground is bulging up unnatural. Sebas, are there any nearby hills or the like? There are none. Regretfully, we are surrounded by flatlands. However, since there are nights here, we should be able to perform some sort of eye-deceiving camouflage till the sun is down. Is that so? If we all intend to do so to hide the walls, Mara's idea will be enough. And what if we pile up the dirt from the nearby lands to make dummy hills as camouflage? Then we should blend in. Very well. I shall assign Aura and Mara to carry out this task together. While doing so, you may draw the necessary supply from each floor. Since we cannot camouflage the view from the air, we shall use illusions after finishing the earthworks. So no one will be able to detect Nazareth from the outside. Yes, understood. That was all he could think of at the moment. There were probably a lot of holes left in the plan. That could be dealt with slowly. Later on, after all, it had only been a few hours since all of this had happened. Then you are dismissed for today. Everyone, take a break before beginning our duties. There are many things we do not know, so do not push yourself too hard. The guardians nodded as one to show that they understood. Finally, I have a question for the guardians to begin with. Shaltia, what kind of person am I to? An incarnation of beauty. You are the most beautiful person in the world. Even jewels pale in comparison to your snow-white body. Shaltia did not pause to think about her answer before she gave it. The lack of delay in her reply, she must have been speaking from the heart. Coetus, one who is mightier than all, the guardians and deserving of the title of the supreme Overlord of the great underground tomb of Nazareth. Aura, a merciful leader with a great foresight. Mara, a very gentle person. Demerge, a wise leader who makes decisions and acts on them quickly. Truly a man worthy of the title. Inscrutable. Sebas, the one responsible for assembling all the supreme beings. In addition, the merciful leader who did not abandon us, but stayed by our side until the very end. And finally, Albert, the man who rules over the supreme beings, and our highest, most exalted master. In addition, the man I love the most. I see. I have heard and understood your opinions. Then I shall hand the tasks that were once performed by my former comrades to you. Carry them out, faithfully. After seeing the guardians genuflect once more, Mononaga teleported away. The scenery before his eyes changed in an instant, from the Colosseum to the chamber of the golems of Lemegaton. After looking around to make sure nobody was looking, Mononaga sighed. I'm so tired. Although his body did not feel tired, the mental fatigue was weighing down on his shoulder. Those guys, why do they think so highly of him? They were describing someone else entirely. After hearing the guardians take turn to share their opinions, he wanted to laugh and mock them. from the looks on their faces. They'll sound like they were joking at all. In other words, their words were sincere. If he did not act in a manner which fit their views of him, it might disappoint him. He thought about that. The pressure on him grew and grew, and in addition to that, there was another problem which made one another frown. Of course, his skeletal face could not show expressions. It seemed as though it did. What should I do about Undead? If she keeps up, how will I face Tabula-san?